introduction, I have to tell you, yes, I did come down from New Jersey for this, but please don't judge me. I am actually a native Texan. Thank you. So I was born and bred in Texas, up near Dallas in a small town named Grand Prairie, if anybody knows that area. I'm seeing some head nods. And I have to tell you how refreshing it is to be in a classroom full of Texans. Even if you aren't born here, you're here now, so you're a Texan, because I've spent the last 5 years in Australia. And so to come back and hear people say howdy, so excited, it warms my heart. So howdy, everybody.
Howdy.
Oh, I love that. That's amazing. Way better than first class, by the way. So, as Cody mentioned, I work in the medical device industry for an organization called Stryker. Has anybody in here ever heard of Stryker? Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I'm going to share a little bit with you today about the medical device industry as a whole, what selling looks like, and my personal journey through that as well. And we're going to have some time at the end for some questions. Can anybody tell me why this number might be significant?
It's lucky.
It's lucky? What else? The other class had like 5 different guesses, so come on.
7 days in a week.
7 days in a week, what else?
4G
Biv. Good one. That's a good one.
Something to pay for.
Any other guesses? I'm not sure, but potentially. The number 7 is significant to medical device because this is how many years have been added to the U.S. life expectancy since 1980 because of medical device advancements. Now, what's really interesting about this number is that in the last 10 years, it's risen by 2. So think about that from an extrapolation standpoint. Medical device is single-handedly responsible for improving all of our lives and extending our lives. People often get confused about what medical device really is. Some people think, oh, is it similar to pharmaceuticals? And there might be some similarities, but it's a very, very different industry. To think about what medical device is, it's essentially building a hospital minus the brick and mortar. So it's everything from the lights in an operating room, the tables that somebody's operated on, the chairs in the waiting area, the scalpels that a surgeon might use, the bone saws, and even things that are more advanced like robotics and computer-assisted surgery. Now, I started my sales journey in medical device selling exactly that, and I'm going to share a little bit more throughout my talk about what navigation or computer-assisted surgery is. But the medical device industry has some pretty interesting statistics around it and why it's so important. I won't read each one of these off. You can read much faster than I can talk. But if you look up there, you see how much this industry impacts all of us. Raise your hand if you or someone you know has ever been in a hospital. Every one of us. And if it hasn't happened already, it absolutely will happen. And if you look at some of the specific data points up there, things around death, stroke, acquired disability. Again, these are things that will impact us, whether personally or someone we know and love, at some point in our life. What's also interesting about medical device is that it not only improves our lives as patients and loved ones to patients, but it also helps our economies, both locally, nationally, and globally. And that's because medical device brings a lot of different jobs. It brings research and development. It also helps with getting people, patients, back to their jobs at whatever industry and whatever area of the business they are, faster, with better, improved lives. So a little bit more about my background and who I am. This is what I call the didactic slide. It's like, this is who I am and this is why you should listen to me. Here's my credentials type of thing. So I've got my education up there, and I've got some of my professional experience. I've been with the organization Stryker for about 13 years. Before that, I worked for some other smaller medical device firms. And before that, I worked for Lockheed Martin, which is a ground defense organization. I'll share a story about how I made that really interesting jump from the defense industry to the medical device industry. But I think the column over to the right is even more important because selling is all about that entrepreneurial spirit. And so in addition to my professional experience, all of the careers that I've had, I've been a co-owner in things like a hydroponic organic farm in Oklahoma, in a senior care facility. I've done real estate. And most importantly, and I'm only halfway joking here, I owned a lemonade stand when I was like 6 years old. And I say I'm only halfway joking about that because I'll tell you that sales is something that from an early age you start to figure out you really like to do. Because there's some pretty innate talents that you have to go into sales. Now, I use the word talents, not skills, because skills can be learned. But there's something about talents. You either like dealing with people or you don't. You either like the thrill of the hunt or you don't. So there's some pretty innate things that happen from a very early age that might indicate whether or not you would be happy in a sales profession. And that picture down at the bottom of the screen is the device that I sold for Stryker, which is navigation or computer-assisted surgery. And I'll share a little bit more about what navigation is, but that was my world for many, many years. Now this, like I said, is sort of the didactic screen of like who I am. I feel like I want to give you a little bit more of an idea of who I am as a whole person, right? Not just a professional. And what better way to do that than a countdown? So this is the top 5 things that you should know about Kelley. Number 5 is my top 5. I use these day in and day out, both as a professional and as a person. And I love this program because I look across and I see that all of you have implemented your top 5 in your daily lives as well. Now, what you might not notice up there is that I don't have competition and I don't have Achiever in my top 5, right? I was still very, very successful in sales, even without those. Who knew, right? However, I know we talked a lot about top 5. It's really your top 10 to get a holistic understanding of who somebody is, right? We know this. I asked Gallup once, well, if it's the top 10, then why do we only talk about the top 5? And the very scientific answer from Gallup is because that's how many people can normally remember. So there are 2 within my top 10 that I will call out. It is Achiever in competition, and I will say that these help shape who I was as a sales professional, but also just who I am in general. Now, I'll get into it a little bit later, but I do want to note, if you don't have these in your top 10 or even in your top 20, that is okay. You can still be in sales and you can still be very, very successful. Number 4. This is the top 4 favorite memories I have being in the medical device world, and these were really hard to pick. I've been doing it for a very long time, and I've had a lot of amazing memories. But these are the top 4. Number 4. This is a picture of me right before I walked into an operating room for one of my cases. Somebody in another workshop saw this picture and they said, that guy in the back does not look very happy that you're taking a photo. Don't worry. He's a colleague and a friend. He's goofing off in the back. I was like, thanks for ruining my picture. Appreciate you. I put this picture up here first because of what it represents. It represents what I got to do on a day-to-day basis as a medical device sales professional, which was go into the operating room and be a part of that surgical team that impacted that patient's life, whether it was improving that patient's life or in some case saving that patient's life. So at the end of the day, medical device sales is that. You're impacting patients' lives. My second favorite memory, there's the fulfillment piece to medical device sales, but there's also the success piece. I'm driven, I'm ambitious, I have high goals. Most people who go into sales do. This is me in the year 2013. I had just won a very prestigious award with Stryker. It's our Rolex award. What you can't see in that picture is that I'm shaking taking it because it was a very overwhelming experience because that year culminated in many years of literal blood, sweat, and tears to get to this point and what it meant. So medical device sales has incredible fulfillment opportunities, but it also rewards you really well for success as well. My third favorite memory. Anybody recognize that city? Sydney, Australia. So I spent the last 5 years living in Sydney, Australia with my organization, Stryker. And this is the actual view upon descent that you see of the city. Here's a little tip. If you ever go to Sydney, sit on the left-hand side of the plane next to the window. That's your view on the way down. Best money you can buy. What this picture represents to me is, yes, it was amazing to be out there. It was amazing to live abroad. But it represents the broad amount of opportunities that you can have in the medical device world. I moved out there with Stryker, with the organization that I work for, and I signed my contract before I had ever gone to that island before. So I literally landed knowing no one in that country, but immediately felt like I had moved with built-in friends because of my Stryker colleagues. My fourth favorite memory. This is in another part of the world. This is in Bolivia, which is South America. And this is in the year 2015. And I had the opportunity to go to Bolivia as a partnership with Stryker and Operation Smile. For those that aren't familiar with Operation Smile, they are a nonprofit organization that travels the world and provides cleft palate surgeries to patients, usually very young patients, and many times it's the first time somebody has seen any type of medical professional in their life. Stryker partners with Operation Smile every year and goes on a mission, and they select a certain number of people throughout our global organization to go. And I got to go to Bolivia, and this picture in particular is really touching and meaningful to me because of what it represents. So one, it represents the opportunities to make an impact, not just in your local community, going into the operating room and being a partner, but also on the global stage as well. But on a more personal note, this particular picture is my favorite out of that entire trip because of the moment. So as a volunteer, part of our role there was to entertain the children while they waited in sometimes very long lines to see the doctor. And so this particular day, we were walking up and down the line. We had stickers and toys and things like that, and we're just kind of hanging out with the kids. And I had a stack of hair barrettes. So I was going up to little girls and kind of decorating their hair. And I put a hair barrette in this little girl's hair, and as I walked away, I felt her tug on my sleeve. And I turned around, and she motioned for me to come down to her. And I knelt down, and she took the barrette out of her hair, and she put it into mine. And it was the most beautiful moment because I thought, my Spanish is not so good, but it didn't matter. The language barrier wasn't an issue because it was more about core human things, right? Compassion, generosity, and just genuine love. It was the most beautiful, touching moment, and I couldn't have done that without being with Stryker and in the medical device world. Number three are my three main chapters in life. So I mentioned I'm a native Texan. The first chapter, I am born and bred in Texas, up near Dallas. The beginning stages of my career were in sales. This is that piece of equipment that I sold, navigation, and that's me. I am in an operating room, but I'm not about to start surgery. Can anybody guess why?
You're a saleswoman?
Say again?
You're a saleswoman?
I don't have all the equipment on. So walking into an operating room, you have to have personal protective equipment on, both for you, but also for the patient, right? And so normally, this is the unsexy part of the job, you're wearing like a hairnet and a mask. If there's any kind of intraoperative imaging happening, you're in a massive lead. So it's really not fun. What I am about to walk into here is a cadaver lab. And that's exactly what that sounds like. Part of your role as a medical device professional is teaching surgeons how to implement your different tools into their standard practice. And I'm sure none of us would want to be that guinea pig for the first time that a surgeon picks up a new tool. So we take them to cadaver labs and we walk them through. And at cadaver labs, we are able and legally allowed to help assist them. In the actual operating room, we do not get near a real patient because, as you so astutely pointed out, we are sales professionals, not surgeons. My second chapter, Sydney, Australia. So I lived there for the last 5 years. I'm only 11 months back to being in the States now. Now, whenever I was out in Sydney, I went what we call in-house. So sales we usually call external or sales team. Anything that an organization does internally, like marketing, HR, operations, we call in-house. And I came in-house and started out in marketing. I marketed navigation, the system that I sold. And I looked after all of Australia and New Zealand. And it was while I was out there that I found my passion for leading people and for teaching people and coaching. And so about a year after I moved out there, I moved into the learning and development, or what we call talent management space. And that has a lot to do with standing up in front of people and speaking. It has a lot of one-on-one coaching, and I use strengths every single day in my role to coach people. And then my third chapter is a relatively new chapter. 3 months ago, I moved to New Jersey. Is anybody in here from New Jersey? Okay, I'll tell you the real deal about New Jersey since nobody's in here. No. It's actually beautiful. I was shocked because being from Texas, I sort of had this image of New Jersey, which was like the Real Housewives of New Jersey. It's nothing like that. I think there are other areas, but it's absolutely stunning. And what I currently do out there, I look after talent management for all of the East Coast, and that's all different areas of the business, all different levels of the business. So everybody from operations, HR, marketing, and sales as well. Number 2 thing to know about me are the 2 most handsome men in my life. So I guess I'll start with my fiance. His name is Pavnesh, and this is us at our engagement ceremony in Mumbai about a year ago. And the other handsome gentleman on the other side of the screen is our golden retriever. He's 11 months old. He's our fur baby. We're obsessed. And his name is Sergeant Butterscotch. And number 1, if there's anything that sums me up as a person, it is this quote. What would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? I found this quote early in my sales journey, and it really revolutionized the way that I approached selling and just life in general. Because let me tell you something about sales. There are going to be times that you deal with people that you don't like. There's going to be times that you deal with people who might scare you or intimidate you. There's going to be times when you just do not want to get out of bed because you've been told no, 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 no. It's this quote that changed my relationship to those things. Because it's oftentimes just that one step that you'll take out of your comfort zone that gets you that next deal or that next opportunity. So I use this quote whenever I got told no a million times in sales. And quite frankly, I used this quote when I made the decision to move to a country that I had never visited before. I signed my contract and got on a plane before I had ever stepped foot in that country before. And it was one of the best decisions I ever made. I was meant to be there for 2 years. I ended up staying for 5. And at times, I've been known to do things that I'm pretty certain I could not fail at. This is me jumping out of an airplane in New Zealand. I think my face says it all. I have to tell you, I felt like James Bond on the way up. I was like, I have got this. I am so cool. I was that way until we swung our legs over to jump out, and then I was like, I do not got this. A lot of cuss words came out of my mouth. I tried to crawl back into the plane. They wouldn't let me, and I went. One of the best experiences ever. Has anybody in here ever skydived? Yeah? Would you do it again?
Some are seen it, yeah.
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 It's funny that you say that. I have a rule about it. I would never skydive unless it was a really beautiful place, because if, on the off chance something happens, I at least want a good view on the way down.
I saw cattle all the way down.
You saw cattle on the way down. Oh, bless her heart. So that's a little bit about my background. Now to talk about actually, I want to get to know you more. So I'm at a bit of a disadvantage now because now you know all about me. I don't know much about you. So in a moment, I'm going to read off a few things. If they describe you, I just want to stand up really quickly. So stand up if you are interested at all in sales as a profession. Okay, thank you. Sit down. I'm glad most of you stood up. Otherwise, this would be really boring for the next 35 minutes. Stand up if you were born in Texas. Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay, sit. Stand up if you were born in another state in the U.S. All right. Very good. Thank you. Stand up if you were born in another country. Wonderful. And stand up if you have ever lived in another country. Fantastic. All right. Stand up if you know your Gallup top 5 by heart. There won't be a quiz, don't worry. Very good. I would highly encourage, if you don't know your top 5 by heart, get a coach, read about it, learn it. It will change your life. Stand up if you know somebody at Med Device. I don't count yet. Wonderful. And stand up if you know someone who works at Stryker. Wonderful. That means I can talk all the bad things. Thank you for letting me get to know you a little bit better. That helps me as a speaker just understand what different areas to touch on. So I've shared a little bit about my background. I want to share about how I got into med device, because when I was in university, and even out of university, I didn't even know med device was a thing, right? And to share about my journey into med device, you've got to go all the way back to the year 2003. So the year 2003, I was an intern with Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin is a defense contractor, one of the largest in the nation, and also internationally. And I was in the marketing department, and I marketed rockets and launchers and missiles. We called it ground defense. So anything that shoots or got shot from the ground. And as I mentioned, it was 2003, so it was relatively soon after 9/11. And we had a number of operations going on, including one called Operation Iraqi Freedom. Now, I had a secret security clearance with the government at this time, and what that means is that any time that one of the programs that I was working on got deployed, I got a page at the time, and you had to go into a room very similar to this setup that was set up like a theater, and you watched it deploy live on the screen. So one particular day, I got the page that one of the systems, ATACMS, was being deployed. Now, ATACMS is the missile that's being fired at a truck. That truck is called a HIMARS. ATACMS is a special kind of missile. Does anybody know, by the way, the difference between a rocket and a missile? Yes?
Can you control the direction of a missile?
Exactly. So a missile can change trajectory and do a number of different things mid-air. A rocket is like a big bullet. You aim it, you fire it, it hits. So this is a missile. And what makes this missile unique is that it's got its main warhead that takes out bunkers, buildings, tanks, things like that. But upon descent, the shaft of it opens and 200 bomblets fall out. So I get this page. I go to a theater. The lights are a bit dim. It's a nighttime raid, so you're watching it in night vision. You see all of it play out. You see the main warhead hit. Big bright light goes away. Then about 10 seconds later, you start to see a lot of little flashes. That's the bomblets falling. And that takes care of what we call collateral damage, or people running away. I share this story because this was the moment that changed my life and my trajectory as a sales professional, or a professional, period. I want to make one thing very clear. I have the utmost respect for our armed military men and women in service and what they do for us and our country. But for me personally, in that moment, I decided that instead of blowing people up for a living, I probably wanted to do something that helped a little bit more. So the next week, I resigned. Now, I knew that I wanted to get into something that helped people. I wasn't quite sure what that was, because at the time, I still didn't even know what medical device is. I mean, unless you know somebody in med device already, or you come to something like this program, who would know that there are professional business people standing in an operating room, right? I didn't know that. I don't know if any of you would have ever thought that. And so I started my journey to get into medical device and ended up at Stryker. So why med device? Again, a very personal story for me, and it's something that I'll share. Every single day when you're a medical device rep, you have the opportunity to go and impact a patient's life. That is a really profound opportunity, right, and a really big honor. And there was one day that solidified that for me. It was about the year 2009, and it was a Friday, and it was 5:30 p.m. And guys and girls, I was not in a good mood. I was annoyed. It was 5:30 p.m. on a Friday. I had plans to get to. It had been a very long week. I was dog-tired, and I got a call. There was a surgery about to happen, but I didn't come in and support. It was a brain tumor surgery. And so I went. I drove myself up. It was raining outside. I was just annoyed, right? Now, anytime a case is happening, the rep and a team of setup people come in ahead of time to prep the room, because every case is unique. You need different equipment, different beds, all of that. So I was standing in the room with one of the nurses ahead of time, and I was looking at my navigation screen. Now, to give you a little bit of background on navigation, so it's computer-assisted surgery, and what you do in a brain case is you upload the MRI, which is pictures of your brain, into the system, and then the instruments that a surgeon would use are connected wirelessly to that system. So as they insert their tool through tissue, it shows on the screen in real time where they are in 3D. This is incredible because it allows people to be more accurate with where their tools are going, especially important when you're digging around somebody's brain. And you can be more aggressive with things like tumor removal because you know what is tumor versus healthy tissue. So here I am, I'm standing behind that screen, I'm preparing the images, sour mood. Talking with the nurse, and she says, oh, have you looked at the patient data yet? I said, no, I haven't. What kind of case is this? She said, da-da-da-da-da. Started scrolling through the MRI, and I noticed the tumor was very large. Not only was it very large, it was in a position that was very near the motor functionality of the brain, meaning that if you made a mistake, even sub-millimeter, you could paralyze this patient. And as the nurse and I are talking, she says, just so you know, this is not a cure case. This is an extend case. What that means is we weren't going to be able to save that patient's life with this surgery. We were buying this patient a few more months to live. And what made it even more important is that this patient already only had a few months to live. We didn't want to be responsible for causing even more damage to those precious last few months that they had. So because it was very near the motor strip, it was very critical that everything was accurate. Now she says this to me, and I'm still in my bad mood, and I'm still thinking about my plans that I'm missing, and I'm still thinking about how it's raining outside, and I haven't had dinner yet, and all these things are swirling, right? Door opens to the operating room, patient is getting wheeled in. First thing I notice, her eyes. She is terrified. Second thing I notice, they had just shaved her head. And she was kind of touching it. Because let me tell you, as a female, having to do that, especially for that reason, is a reality check about what's happening in your life. The third thing I noticed was how young this girl looked. And I looked back at my patient data screen, and I realized we were the same age. And here I was in my head complaining about working late on a Friday, it's raining outside, I'm quite hungry, and I'm missing these plans. And in that moment, everything shifted. Because this girl is being wheeled in to fight not even to cure her life, right? But just for a few months. And that to me is what the medical device industry is. It's being able to impact patients' lives on a daily basis, and in many ways, not just impact their life, but save their life. So when applying med device sales, because there's a lot of different things that you go into with a medical device, right? It's a whole industry. You could do HR, you could do talent management like I do now, you could do marketing, there's a million different things. So why med device? I gotta say firstly, there's a lot of misconceptions about what medical device sales is. I think about my friends, and they're like, oh, you're quite successful, you must be partying on a private jet all the time. You know, my mom thinks I'm literally the one doing the surgery. I'm still trying to explain to her, 13 years later, what it is that I do. Society, I think med device gets a bit of a bad rap sometimes, especially for people who don't really know what it is. For anybody in here who watches Netflix, there's a documentary on medical device that came out not too long ago. What my sales manager thinks I do, I don't know, conjure up like sales out of nowhere, like a magician. What I think I do, which is solve problems and save people often. But really what you do in medical device sales is a lot of studying. Because let me tell you, there are certain industries in selling that it is all shaking hands and making deals and going to have steak dinners. Maybe that's just what we do in Texas, I don't know. But in medical device sales, there is the element of needing the sales acumen and the business acumen. You've also got to know your stuff. Because in the operating room, they are looking to you to be the subject matter expert on whatever it is, that product that you're selling. So you have to know what's going on in that surgery. You have to know what the anatomy is. You have to understand the intricacies of the algorithms that are used in software. There are so many things that you need to know. You are truly the subject matter expert, and what that makes you is a true partner in that operating room. It will happen on a daily basis where you're in surgery. There's usually about 7 to 8 people in the room, plus a patient on the table, and you will get a ton of questions. Kelley, how many millimeters should I take off of this knee? Kelley, the software isn't working. What's going on? Kelley, I don't think that this instrument is calibrated correctly. What should I do? Kelley, this patient has a really bad varus or valgus deformity. What would you recommend for this? Now you might be thinking, hang on a second, this is a surgeon. Haven't they gone to medical school? Should they know this? Yes, the surgeon is absolutely the person who controls that room and has ultimate say in what happens. But as a subject matter expert walking in on your particular piece of equipment, whether it's computer-assisted surgery or the bone saw that they use or the scalpel or the lights above, they're looking to you to be that partner. Now, when you should consider medical device sales as a profession, there's a few key elements here. So if you enjoy being part of the solution, because let me tell you, whether it's medical device sales or any other kind of sales, that's basically your job. You're a solutions master, right? You want forever transferable skills. I started my career in sales. I'm in a very different part of the world now. I do internal business coaching, talent management, things like that. I still use the skills that I used as a sales professional every single day. The skills that you learn, and I even mentioned that a little bit further down, resiliency, that solutions, service mindset, all of those things you use every single day, no matter where you're at. If you're passionate about developing as not just a professional, but as a human, and I hope what I've impressed upon you is that the stories that I've told are not so much about the widget that I sold, it's about the impact and the emotional element. Yes, I absolutely developed skills as a professional in sales, but I also developed who I am as a person in and out of the boardroom, in and out of the operating room. You have to be goal-oriented if you want to be in sales. By the way, this does not mean having high achiever or high competition, okay? You just have to find your why. You have to figure out what are your goals and why do you get up every day, because it's a hard job. And you want to have to be a valued partner with your customers, and I chose that word very, very intentionally. Some people, when you talk about sales, they think of it as like the used car salesman stereotype, right? That's not what a true sales professional is. Really, a sales professional is a partner with whoever their customer is, coming up with a solution that works best for them. And there are some very key things that, if you have these, you probably should not go into not just med device sales, but really any sales. So if you're not comfortable with responsibility, maybe pick something different. Because selling has a lot of responsibility on it, especially when you're the one standing in an operating room, telling a surgeon how many millimeters of bone to take off, or where in the spinal column they should be injecting. Yeah? If you don't enjoy people, probably don't want to go into sales. Sales is essentially dealing with people day in and day out. And you don't have to be best friends with all of them. And you can certainly go away and vent about them later. But there has to be some level of professionalism in dealing with different types of people, especially people who are different to you. If you have low ethics, or if you're willing to win at any cost, please don't go into medical device sales. As an industry, especially as a company at Stryker, we pride ourselves on our ethics and our values and not just what we do, but how we go about it. And nothing will get you fired faster, whether it's in Stryker or really any business in medical device now, than having low ethics or trying to win a deal by being unethical. If you're unwilling to accept feedback or you're not willing to be coached, you don't want to go into sales full stop. And here's why. You can be selling for 5, 10, 20, 50 years. You can always learn something new. It is a constantly evolving skill. And you have to be able to accept feedback. Now, I know it's not always fun to get constructive feedback, which is essentially a nice way of saying, here's what you're doing wrong, but it is a critical skill. Really not just in sales, but in life. Full stop. And finally, please don't go into medical device sales if you've heard you can just make a lot of money and that's your only reason. Now, I spoke earlier, medical device sales can be very lucrative. There's a lot of success to it, absolutely. But if that is your only factor for going into it, you will burn out, you will quit, you will be miserable, you will go sell software IT or something like that. Because it's a hard job. There's a lot of studying involved, there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of responsibility. You get told no a lot. And there's also a queasy factor. So you see a lot of things, right? You're in cadaver labs. Whole bodies are expensive, guys. We use parts. There is an element to that if you don't like that, probably don't go into it. Because when you're standing in there having to move severed heads around for a cadaver lab, you're not going to be thinking about your paycheck. You're going to be thinking like, why have I done this? But don't get me wrong, there are so many good things that come out of it as well. Now, the $1 million question. Can you be successful in sales if you have a top 5 that look like this? What do you think?
Yes.
What do you think?
Yes.
Why not? Yeah. Well, great answer, by the way. Absolutely. You can be in sales and you can be very successful. I chose these top 5 very, very intentionally because they're actually the top 5 of one of our vice president of sales who has had a long and illustrious career with Stryker. There's a lot of people who, when they're not educated appropriately on strengths, say, well, you don't have high achiever, you don't have high competition, you don't have high responsibility, you can't be in sales. That is not true. When I look at these, I actually see sales superpowers. Because all of these tell me this person knows how to connect with somebody, they know how to read somebody, they're not going to railroad or steamroll somebody. These people are going to be the ones that are true partners with their customers, not just vendors. Now, don't get me wrong, if you also have all of this, the high competition and high achiever and all that, that's phenomenal as well. Does anybody in here have any of these in their top 5? Fantastic. So I want to share a little bit about my strengths journey, but I want to do a time check. How am I doing?
We've got 12 minutes.
12 minutes, okay. A little bit of my strengths journey, and then I'm going to answer some questions. So these are my top 5. Now, when I first joined into Stryker, I was only the second female hired into the sales division for the particular division that I worked in. So you can imagine coming in, my colleagues looked very different from me. My manager and my director looked very different from me, and they all sold very differently from me. And the first couple of years that I was selling, I didn't know my strengths. And I was still successful, but it was in spite of myself, not because of myself. And what I mean by that is I was trying to be like the other people. I was trying to be like the people who I saw were successful. And when I took my strengths, it was like my eyes opened. And for the first time, I figured out I could be successful as a sales professional, even though I didn't look like, act like, or sell like my colleague Joe Schmo, right? And it revolutionized the way that I approached my life, my profession, my customers, everything. My point to all of this is no matter what strengths you have, it's not about what you have, it's about how you use them. I mentioned that I work for Stryker. What makes us unique about Stryker is we were started by an orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Homer Stryker. So we are a publicly traded company now, but the family still sits on the board. So it has that very familial feel to it. And this is what we live by every single day. It's our mission and it's our values. We talk about these before every meeting, before every customer visit, before every presentation. And it's not just words on a screen. We live and breathe this. And this, to me, embodies what medical device is and what Stryker is. Together with our customers, we are driven to make healthcare better. And that's what we do, because at the end of the day, no matter what area of the business that you're in, whether it's for Stryker or another medical device company, whether it's HR, marketing, operations, or on that front line in sales, at the end of the day, it's about the patient that's on the table and what's happening in that moment to impact or even potentially save a patient's life. I'm going to stop there and open it up for questions. Oh, fantastic, yes?
What do you think the biggest problem facing healthcare is right now? How can Stryker help?
Yeah. How much time do we have? 8 minutes. The biggest challenge facing healthcare. I mean, part of it is reach, right? Because there's a cost to this stuff, and there's a lot of communities that need it. And the way that Stryker helps is through things like Operation Smile. It's through partnering with different organizations to put medical device across not just the country, but across the world from an equity standpoint, so that people can have access to those life-changing things, right? At the beginning of my talk, I talked about adding 7 years to the U.S. life expectancy. We'd like to see that number increase globally as well. That's just one of the many issues. Yes?
Go ahead. Okay. So you said that you went to school for marketing and business. Did you learn all of the medical stuff when you worked for Stryker? You just learned it all?
Yes. So you do not need to have medical background necessarily to go into medical device or medical device sales. Companies train people internally on the whatever specific equipment that you're working on. So my undergrad is in marketing, my master's is in business leadership. And before I worked for Stryker, like I said, I was selling rockets and launchers and missiles. So the first time I stepped into an operating room was with Stryker. But they were very careful to send you to training ahead of time. And then there's even a cadence afterwards where even if you're in the operating room, you've got a veteran rep or a trainer with you for a number of cases. And what was your question? Oh, okay.
How would you say Stryker separates itself from other competitors like Medtronic, GE Healthcare, and Philips Healthcare? Like, what separates y'all from them? They're also big.
Absolutely. It's an interesting question because a lot of people will say, oh, it's the products that we sell. And don't get me wrong, we sell some really revolutionary products. But to me, a widget is a widget, right? At the end of the day, what separates Stryker is this. Because we live and breathe this every single day. And we've lost business because competitors would do the unethical thing and we refuse to. And really what it boils down to is the people that we hire. We use Gallup, so Gallup uses different tools like Strengths, which is a development tool, but we also leverage Gallup as a selection tool as well. Very different to Strengths, it's not the same thing. So we bring in people who have some of those innate values and things like that already. Yes, ma'am?
Do y'all have internships?
We do. And if anybody's interested in the internships, I've got some brochures lying right here that have all the information on that. Yes, ma'am?
When was the first time you were told no? How did you feel?
First time I was told no, like, ever or in sales?
In sales.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I remember this. So I was fresh out of my 2-week training from navigation, so I obviously knew everything there was to know, right? And I walked up to a surgeon at the scrub sink. The scrub sink is a sink outside of the operating room where they wash their hands to get ready to go into surgery. Not an ideal place to go and talk to somebody, but I didn't know. So I walked up, hi Dr. Capello, my name is Kelley, I'm your new navigation rep. I word vomited all over him. I don't even know what I was talking about. I was rattling off specs and trying to sound important and like I knew what I was doing. And he turned and looked at me and was like, what are you doing? I don't even remember what he said because it was a blur at that point. He didn't say the word no, but it was essentially no. And what I learned, like, firstly, how did I feel? I was embarrassed because I realized immediately what I had done wrong. I think I also learned humility in that moment and kind of some self-awareness about where you talk to your customers, especially surgeons. And I also felt super annoyed. Like, I don't like being told no. Nobody does. And so I was like, what do you mean? I mean, obviously, I'm pretty brilliant, and the system is pretty brilliant. Why wouldn't you want to hear more about this? Yes, ma'am.
What was the most challenging lesson you learned while working at Stryker?
Challenging lesson I learned. Probably how to get up day to day with some really good points. So in my particular division, we were 100% commission. So what that meant is that whenever you sold a system, you got paid really nicely. But until you sold a system, you didn't get paid anything. And so I learned the balance of almost that mental and emotional stamina of getting through some really hard times, because when you've got a 6-month sales cycle and you lose a deal in between that, you've got to be, one, really good at managing your money, and 2, really good at managing your internal narrative. Because it's real easy to be like, forget this, I'm done, I gotta go find something easier. Yes, sir?
What are something you learned at Lockheed that you took into Stryker?
Oh my gosh. Such a good question. So long ago. Something that I learned at Lockheed. Probably that there has to be something deeper than just a paycheck. Because I could have stayed at that organization. It's a really good company. You get like every other Friday off. You get amazing benefits, all of those different things. But because I had lost the passion and the why for why I was there, I knew that whatever I went into next had to have that. Yes, sir.
When did you know you wanted to be a salesperson?
Oh my gosh. Consciously, it probably wasn't until I was maybe 20. Unconsciously, if I look back at my life, I've always been a salesperson. Like even from that lemonade stand that I set up at 6 years old outside to even like trying to get what I wanted out of my parents, that's absolutely sales tactics that you're using. Yes, sir. Yeah, so why did I go to graduate school? I always wanted to. It was one of those like life goals. Is that my water? Sorry. I think I've been drinking out of her water. Sorry. It was a big life goal that I always wanted to do. My program was in Australia, actually, and it was a Master's of Business Leadership. So if an MBA is like the day-to-day runnings of an organization, an MBL is like how do you enable change management across the business, things like that. And it fits so nicely into what I do within the talent management space. Yes, sir.
So you talked about your entrepreneurial ventures being like a big part of, or like a really important part of you.
Yeah.
So along your career, how would you say, or how could you give advice to us about how to get into those ventures while making a career for yourself?
Yeah. What is really cool about being in the medical device space is that it's easy to find like-minded people who are very entrepreneurial. In fact, medical device specifically looks for people like that to go into sales, not necessarily people who have medical backgrounds. So, for example, a lot of my colleagues used to be copier salesmen because you talk about learning resilience, like you definitely do it there. And so you're in this company where you're around like-minded people, entrepreneurial, highly goal-oriented, and you're constantly thinking of ways to be successful, make money, grow, learn, challenge yourself. So all of those ventures were actually partnerships with my colleagues that we ran concurrently. And Stryker's a really great organization because as long as you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and it is pretty easy to tell whenever you're not, they really give you a lot of autonomy and latitude to live your life the way that you want to, run your business internally the way that you want to, and then also potentially run other things as well. Yes, sir.
What did you do to go from like a novice sales professional to being a masterful sales professional at Stryker? And then what did you do from being that top sales professional to being a sales manager? What did you do to excel at all those things and train up?
I failed a lot. Being in sales is all about learning, and it's about getting out of your comfort zone, and sometimes you fail. But the thing about the failing is that you learn from it, and you pick yourself up from it. So I reached out to people. I got a mentor immediately. Not just one, I got multiple mentors. I challenged myself. I asked for feedback a lot from everyone, and I was open to it. And anytime that I did fail, I reflected on it, I looked back on it. Was it fun? Absolutely not. But I tried to take away something so that the next time I was in that situation, I could learn from it. And that also really helped me get into management and leadership because it's something that I could tangibly turn around and help people in their careers as well. I think we're at time. One last thing that I want to leave you with. 10 things that require zero skill. If you can think about these, master these, do these, you are 10, 15 steps ahead of most other people. The bottom one especially, you might laugh and go, of course people who spell their name write emails. I can't tell you how many people write me, especially they're asking me for something and they misspell my name. It is literally 2 lines above where you're saying, hello, Kelley. So pay attention to this, especially as you interact with industry professionals and getting into internships and future roles. Thank you all very much.